Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy B-Dale. If you're new to this channel, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. In today's transmission, I'm going to be demonstrating the ovulation process when you're talking about the spiritual implications of the final sacrifice of 2030. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get straight to it, because there's a lot of information that I'm going to materialize in this transmission. Now, the motivation behind this presentation is that there was a CIA documentation that just came out talking about how there were 23 Soviet Union soldiers, a part of the KGB, that was turned to stone when they seen these extraterrestrial entities, right? So you got to understand everything. You got to use your critical thinking skills. They're talking about the Ark of the Covenant. They're talking about Hollow Earth. They're talking about the pyramids and the adept chambers. They're talking about all these things because it's coming to terms with the fact that there's something that's going to be taking place big. So you having full disclosure in increments. It's an incremental timeline that they're basically following up to. Now, this is the CIA documentation I was telling you guys about, because it tells you right here, it specifies that at the very instant, 23 Soviet Union soldiers had watched a phenomenon turn into stone poles. So when they came in contact with these extraterrestrial entities, this is a CIA documentation publication that you're looking at right now, right? This is coming from the Russian international documents. So in Siberia, they seen a spacecraft and they seen entities come out of it. And since they witnessed it, that's when they was, turned to stone, right? So this is all going to correlate with the presentation when you're talking about the sacrifice of 2030 and what these extraterrestrial entities is on the planet for. Now, a lot of people don't understand, we all know from an esoteric standpoint that, when you're talking about reptilians, it's an ideology that is also facilitated by the reptilian cortex of the brain, right? Some people see it from a neurological standpoint, but I also see it from a macrocosmic aspect of it. Because why do we have a reptilian cortex of the brain, right? Some of us have, certain neurological faculties that was basically genetically spliced into our genetics by way of these entities, because this is their world, right? But it depends on what faction of bloodline that you came from, right? So there's nothing wrong about, there are, good reptilians, but the great majority of these reptilian entities, these interdimensional entities, a lot of them are actually, very malevolent. Now, we're going to get into this. It tells you that the unseen force behind global enslavement and searching for what is force is really behind the construct of the New World Order and the grander conspiracy. One is bound to investigate these hyperdimensional entities who may be the original handlers, puppet masters of planet Earth, when I was talking about the archons in the last video, when they was extracting the neuromelanin to materialize in physical form when you're talking about artificial intelligence. So it tells you the puppet masters and the mind control perpetuators manipulating the whole mankind. Beyond the frequency and band of normal perception, we have taken seriously the idea that hidden rulers, who are archonic forces, who are draconian reptilian, or when you're talking about the cherubim in the Bible, the 200 fallen angels, like I demonstrated in the last transmission. So they operate from frequencies beyond normal perception. After all, no one knows exactly where their thoughts originate from. That's because they don't have original thoughts. That's why they come to the planet to harvest our energy. When you get into the Gnostic texts and Gnosticism, it tells you that they manipulate human perception by way of the emotions, because the emotions is the catalyst that controls you and keeps you connected to the demiurge, right? And the demiurge is your ego, your egotistical self, which is your shadow self, right? We finna get into it. If they were a force to control which thoughts are beamed into the mind, then every single living person would be vulnerable to psychic attacks, right? This is why you got to use psychic self-defense, right? You got to use psychic self-defense, meaning that you have the ability to create this energetic morphic field around you to where you're able to protect your cipher while standing on your square, right? You got to stand on your square, because when you're operating from a place of mentalism, that means that you have 306 degrees of the physical plane and 306 degrees of the spiritual plane. You combine them both together, that's 720 degrees of knowledge, which is non-ether activation. So, because 7 plus 2 plus 0 equals 9. So that multitude of energy is how you protect yourself. You got to create that energetic bubble to keep these entities from infiltrating your cipher. Because when your nervous system is manipulated, this is when they're able to attach themselves to your solar plex or control you like a remote controller by way of the nervous system, right? So these hyperdimensional entities are said to be able to infiltrate the mind, right? Because I told you, God is the frequency of the mind by way of the gamma radiation. So if they're able to infiltrate your mind with, frequency modifications and stuff like that, and with the STEMO receivers or, technological devices, this is how they're able to do that. Because I told you the archonic force of Baal, his nomenclature title is electro, which is equated to electricity, and you infiltrate corporeal entities through the oscillating signals of electronics. So they infiltrate the mind, make your voice sound like theirs, and they're able to aim generating fear, which is connected to the religious aspect of it, because religion is also a fear tactic tool. It's a war strategy. So that makes you food because they're able to feed off your loosh. So are they the gods of your demand? Are they the gods of your demanded sacrifice? Are they evil spirits that possess people? Are they masters of trickery, technology, continually to try to keep us in a state of fear or out of control of power, right? So when you understand neoclassical art and transgressive art and sculptures, they tell you, all throughout ancient history about how these entities actually exist. Because like I said, you could say, oh, it's not a reptilian, it's a mindset because of the reptilian cortex. But you got to understand that's the microcosmic aspect of it. But the macro of it is actually the fact that these entities actually exist. What's in the dark will come to the light. Not all reptilians are the same. Just not all primates are not the same. Similarly, not all canines and ants are alike. Diversity exists within the species and group, shaping unique traits, behaviors, roles across the populations. So you got some that come from inner earth. You got some that comes from multi-dimensional planes of existence. Then you got some that come from the astral plane, right? And they come here to feed off your life force. We're in a prison planet. Just like when you're in prison, you get thrown in a cell, right? And you get charged with whatever, battery or whatever. Everything's an energy extraction. Just pay attention to the symbology of the words. A cell. You get charged with battery, a crime, right? That's why everything in this system is being used to box you in and to suck up microscopic waves of energy, which is your loosh, your life force, your ether, to where these entities can placate on your emotions, right? Because they don't have emotions. So not all reptilians get along. This is how this began. Reptilians are from other realities that clash from interdimensional entities leading into wars in other galaxies when you're talking about planet Mars, right? That's a whole different transmission. It even tells you in the Babylonian gates how these entities existed, right? This is a part of the Sumerian mythology. Now, there's this publication that I came across, and anytime that you have an unknown author writing a book that basically denotes the fact that it was a multitude of Freemasons who came out with this publication and they gave it out to the masses because by way of the threefold law, they got to tell you the truth, whether it's in the movies, in books, cartoons, or whatever. They got to give you the truth because the truth is how they balance out their karma. But it's up to you to have the spiritual decipherment and use your spiritual intuition to be like, is this real or is this shit fake or not? So the Draconians want Earth for them. This is basically the table of contents. It tells you the revolt of the triad, the wicked hierarchy, little people being kidnapped and unalived, abducted for cloning forms, fallen angels who are the cherubim archonic forces. Then you got the grand experiment, and it even goes into your so-called rapture, and it goes into the CIA, Nazi, the ISIS, and all this other stuff. And it tells you about the hybridization process of, the grand experiment. Now, this publication is going to tell you about the final sacrifice. The final sacrifice is also the embodiment of the fact that there's going to be a smorgasbord process in a smorgasbord event where these entities is going to come from the abyss and feed on humanity, right? That's why everything as far as like the three-dimensional world is being used to harvest your energy. But in the end times, they're not going to be able to take corporeal form. Well, they will take corporeal form. They're going to take corporeal form because they have to reveal themselves to you. That's a part of the sacrifice. That's a part of the covenant. That is a part of the brief. A brief is a covenant, and a covenant is a contract. And that contract is what they made with the government to keep you out of your sovereign capacity, to keep you at a low vibrational state so when they come from the abyss, they can feed off your physiology. That is a part of the sacrifice. That's only if you don't have the map of consciousness that is activated by way of the crown chakra, right? Because you have to be vibrating at a certain frequencies. So when these entities come from the abyss, they're not going to be able to touch you because you have the seal of God, the seal of Solomon, the tetrahedron that protects you in your energetic morphic field to where they're able to not touch your cipher. So it tells you, read this book until the end because the truth is well hidden. Humanity is suffering from an invasion of wicked aliens under the orders of the devil, right? Because the devil or Satan is an extraterrestrial entities, which you're talking about Pindar, right? Pindar is basically the personification of your so-called Antichrist. Now, when you get into this, it tells you that the all Nephilim Draconians and other aliens and fallen angels eat humans, right? Because like I said, you got to understand who you are genetically on this planet. You got to understand the implications that come along with that from a spiritual point of view. Because it tells you about how they need the DNA in order to, it's kind of like the same thing during the process of the Canaanites. The Canaanites, they think that if they eat your physiology, a so-called black person, when you're talking about fermentation process, you got to read the book, the delectable Negro, right? It talks about how they was eating mummies and stuff like that. So the same thing translates when you're talking about these reptilians. These reptilians, they think they can eat your physiology because they think they're going to take up on the essence of a human who has human emotion, right? It's an energy extraction. So the same thing takes place with the Canaanite because the Canaanite is mimicking the energy of the draconian reptilian. Because like I said, Canaanites, they don't have neuromelanin. They are lacking certain genetical properties to harmonize with the sun. So they think that, oh, if I eat, Mike Tyson's physiology, I'm gonna be able to punch like the nigga. Same thing takes place. Just watch the movie. It's the movie. The guy in the movie it was written by Jordan Peele, right? But they was basically hijacking the frequency of the minds of individuals by way of horizontal gene transfer, right? That is contained by transformation, confirmation, and transduction. So horizontal gene transfer, they was transmuting the consciousness of a black person and they was putting inside of so-called white people, right? Putting inside of these doctors and stuff like that. So the same thing takes place with these draconian reptilians. They think that they're able to feed off your energy, that they're going to be able to materialize human emotion, but they don't have emotions, right? So it also tells you the hierarchy of the Draconian reptilian bloodline. I refer to the triad, Lucifer, Satan, and the ex-prince of Earth, who was actually your so-called um, Antichrist. So it tells you the hierarchies and in a trilateral connection of it, and it demonstrates it. It says the royal bloodline of the Draconian, Prime Reptilian, Seraphim, alien families. And it's not actually the Seraphim, it's actually the Cherubim. So Satan controls the top hierarchy of the White Lodge Brotherhood, aka Black Lodge of Brotherhood. So this is all correlated with Freemasonry. This is, you can tell by the format and the words that was demonstrated in this publication that this was written by Freemasons. So the master fallen angels interbred with Wicca Atlantis priestess to create the Nephilim alien children, right? And it talks about how the 200 fallen angels basically materialize themselves through the bloodline, because when you go to the book of Enoch, it talks about how the 200 fallen angels mated with the daughters of man, and the daughters of man are actually the Canaanite, right? The first Canaanite, because we all know the Colossians, when you're talking about the blacks in the Caucasus or whatever, the first Canaanites were actually black, but that's a whole different process. Then you got the master fallen angels control Draco, Prime, Reptilian, Seraphim. But see, like I said, you got to be able to, you got to be able to decipher the information, because there's a lot of misinformation in this publication, but you got to pull what you can from it, right? So that's why I only screenshotted some of these. So it tells you the ruling families have rhesus monkey blood, right? RH factor, right? Meaning that they don't have the ability to have, certain antigens. They're missing certain antigens within their biological structure to where they're not able to tap into your Christ consciousness, because they were genetically spliced with sulfur. That was all coming from the Draconian factions or whatever. Now, it tells you right here, Draconians are able to they're able to reconstruct their DNA sequence to produce a human form using frequency and electromagnetism. This is a basic witchcraft technology that they received from the fallen angels. Because one thing you got to understand, not all Draconians are part of the hierarchy of the archons, because the archons are at the top of the food chain when you're talking about Draconian reptilians. And the technology that they use is the liquid crystal technology that controls the liquid crystal polarization of everything in third density, right? Because everything in third density is being used to confine and trap you into a certain mental construct to feed off your energy, because it's all based on soul trap mechanisms. And it tells you right here, fallen angels can do nothing without the permission of humans, right? The fallen angels and their offspring are disembodied demon spirits and the Nephilim aliens, and they're being used to basically harvest the energy of humans, and they're able to soul scout human meat suits or shapeshift, right? And it also tells you that the Republic Rebel Alliance resists allies, spaceship commanders. This is pretty much nothing right here. And then they talk about how they have a Draconian egg hatching farm, and they have Draconian evil technology, and they also have many different ways to, manipulate your physiology with the evil technology. So I'm gonna show you a video about this woman talking about the hatching farms, the egg hatching farms, because like I said, you got to take what you can from certain publications and be able to use your discernment, your spiritual discernment, to be like, is this real or is this fake? So like I said, I'm going to show you a video right now that's going to demonstrate. It's an old video that came out like in the 80s, I believe. I don't even think I sent it to myself. Hold on. Let me send it to myself. All right. Hold on for a second, guys. Because once I get it to myself, I'll be able to show you guys. But, until then, it comes up. I'm gonna be talking about everything as far as we're gonna still keep going with the presentation. But they have egg catching farms. And so we're not finna get into this right here because this is a part of the process. So, like I said, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. You know, almost about 60% of the people who is, watching the videos, they're not subscribed to the channel. So if you will, hit that subscribe button. If you're new to the channel, hit that 999 for the non-ether activation because we telling the truth. The age of Aquarius is all about demonstrating the truth. It's almost coming up. And I cannot wait to show you guys this video. I showed it a long time ago in one of my older videos, but I got to show you this video now because everything comes full circle. When you understand the science of circumology and you understand all perspectives to get one truth, that's when you have to show the receipts from the past in order to get people to understand what's taking place in the future. That's what this is all about. So, okay, I got it. All right, here we go. Now I'm gonna show the video.
Why were they gathering eggs and this? And they told me they were making a hybrid race.
And for what?
Ask them. Why were they gathering eggs and this? And they told me they were making a hybrid race.
And for what?
They didn't want. I wanted to know for what, but they never gave an inkling of what it was for, of what this hybrid race would be doing, where it would be, or what. My grandfather died in 1940, so this was in the 1930s when these things were happening with them. She said they would be sitting on the side porch at night, and they would see lights over the oil wells, and a lot of times they would see what they thought were little children dressed in white running around the oil wells. And on several times they saw it in the daytime. They would see these little children dressed in white, and once or twice they got up to go see if they could catch the little children and find out who they were, and they would start out, but by the time they would get there, the children would be gone. The main concept was creating a hybrid breed. At least that's what they told me, that they were trying to create a race of people that could live in our atmosphere and in their atmosphere. And they had not yet produced that person. Now, on another occasion, I remembered being shown a baby that really favored my grandson a lot. If you would, give it the slant eyes, they weren't as big as their eyes, but it looked human. And I knew that this was my child, and I wanted to take that child with me, but they said that it would not be able to live in this atmosphere. Well, I know that it was physical because I
need y'all to understand something. Any woman named Mabel is telling your ass the truth. This is what you call the personification of Big Mama. So if you ain't gonna believe me, at least believe Big Mama. Any woman that, fixes 4-course meals a day, deviled eggs, mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, cornbread, and all that other shit, she's telling you the truth. If she has the consistency to do this every single day, a Big Mama, that's how you know she's telling the truth. We all know the energy of Big Mama because Big Mama don't play no games. They're going to tell your ass the truth whether you like it or not, right? So I don't, like I said, energy don't lie. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to keep playing the video.
If I did not get out of that car, where did I get all that dirt that was up to here on me? If I just stepped out of the car and looked up, because we were on pavement. So it's no way that I could have got that much dirt on me just standing outside a car on the street looking. And that's the first thing that let me know that it was real. And beside this knot, which might be, you know, you could say that it could be anything. The bruises are real. Nobody is beating me up in my sleep. Because if anybody hit me that hard, I would wake up. And the places where I have the bruises, I couldn't give them to myself. And like I said, if I bumped into something that hard, I would certainly remember it. So it's real to me. It's not really a frightening experience. It's just, it happens, and it doesn't leave you frightened. I think the thing that frightened me the most was that I was not consciously aware of what had happened, and I did not know what to put these ships with. I didn't have anything concrete to say, well, they're coming to do this or that. I just had the frightening feeling. And after I found out what had happened, I was at peace with what had happened, knowing that there's nothing that I can do about it, because I cannot stop them. Nobody can stop them from doing what they want to do. Nobody on this earth.
They also have the technology of animal magnetism, meaning that you can put you in a hypnosis state. And that's also going to be correlated to the next video I'm going to be showing you that demonstrates this.
Because they are too far advanced mentally and technologically for, we don't have a defense at all.
Yeah, it's like they do magic.
Yeah, they could come in today and take over if that was their desire. But like I said, I don't feel that it's their desire to take over through violence, and they don't care about governments. See, government control is not their thing. They want bodies, and they want minds that are going to do what they want the minds to do, but they need the bodies to do whatever it is with. And that's where we come in.
Exactly.
So that's why would they?
She said that's where we come in, because they need the bodies. That is a part of the final sacrifice of 2030. Again, any woman named Mabel White is not going to tell your ass some stuff that she just made up. She's telling you the truth. Like I said, any woman has the ability to fix full course meals every single day. That's an upstanding woman, full spectrum, right? So like I said, if she has the ability to get up and make, you know, greens and mashed potatoes and care about the family doing the laundry, that's an upstanding woman right there. There's not a, you know, she's not finna be lying about nothing. So there's another video I must show you. But first we're going to get into this though. Hold on. First we're going to get into the rest of the presentation. Now, this goes into they're returning from the abyss. The problem is that millions and millions of so-called Christians don't even know the truth, because like I said, according to the pastor, when they go to seminary school and stuff like that, they're not telling you the true truth and full spectrum, because they don't even understand the Bible, right? They can't even tell you the diametrical difference between God in all caps, God with a lowercase g in lowercase letters, and God with a capital G in lowercase letters. They can't even tell you the difference, because all those words are basically titles, right? So they don't even know what they're reading. So when they come from the abyss, that is going to be the embodiment of the final sacrifice, right? That's what they're prepping you for. That's what this is all about. So now I'm going to show you another video that demonstrates this truth. So like I tell people all the time, if you want the truth, you got to get past information. You got to get old videos and tie it up to everything that's taking place on the timeline in present day and modern day times right now. So you take modern day information and you mix it in with the old information, and then this is where you get the truth, right? So Jordan Maxwell, he's finna tell you about his experience or somebody else's experience talking about, draconian reptilians. And it's also in connection to everything that the woman was saying, talking about the egg catching farms or whatever. It's also talking about how they was hypnotized in his videos, just like how she was talking about.
I brought up the subject of the reptile aliens and my belief about the reptile aliens and what the ancient peoples of the ancient world, the Babylonians, the Sumerians, the Phoenician Canaanites, the Egyptians, especially the Sumerians, all the ancient peoples of the world talked about the reptile aliens. And so I just brought that up in passing, that I think that there are reptile aliens here. I've heard too many stories, and then I told some of the stories that I had heard. Well, after the program, I got a phone call from a guy who later on I found out is an extremely wealthy businessman in Las Vegas. He buys and sells hotels and commercial properties in Vegas, and he was the biggest there. And he said to me, he said, Jordan, we listen to Lou Epton. We love Lou Epton. So in the office in the mornings, we listen to Lou Epton on the show. And he says, but this morning when you came on, we got so interested in listening to you that everybody just kind of quit work for a little bit and was listening to you. And he says, and when you mentioned the reptile aliens, it shocked us. And he said, I'm a Christian and I have 5 men who work for me in my office, and they're Christians and they all belong to the same church. We all go to the same church, and all 6 of us are in the office, and we were hearing you today. And he said, when you mentioned reptile aliens, I had to call you and tell you, we're Christians, but every year we go somewhere in the world on vacation, and my company pays for everything. And he says, so I take, and all 6 families go together on a vacation somewhere. And he says, and last year, now this was like in '88, so he's talking about '87. And he said, last year we decided to go camping for a couple of weeks in Colorado. And he says, we were up in the mountains and we broke camp one morning, and we walked up to the top of this mountain. We were almost there anyway at camp, and then the next morning when we broke camp, we walked up to the top of the mountain to look over the lay of the land. And he says that out in the valley, we could see that there had been an area that had been cleared away. It was like a round area that had been cleared away. And there was a circle of people out there, and they were all wearing robes, and they were all holding hands and swaying back and forth, singing and chanting. You could barely hear them. But he said, but it was very quiet where we were. We could see that there was some kind of a ritual dancing or swaying back and forth in a circle. They were all holding hands. And there was obviously somebody in the middle, like a priest or something in the middle. And he said, this is out in the middle of nowhere. That these people are out here with this thing that they're doing. And he said, we're up here in the mountains looking down on them. And he said, while we were standing there looking at them, all of a sudden, a second figure popped up out of nowhere. But it was bigger than the man that was in the middle. It's in the middle too, but it's much bigger. And it pointed up at us. And he said, and all the singing stopped, everybody stopped and pointed. And he said, we knew we'd been had. And he says, we didn't know what was going on, but whatever it was, it just popped in out of nowhere, pointed up at us, and everybody is now pointing at us. And he said, so we figured we better just get out of here. He said, when we turned around, it was standing behind us. That thing which was down there was already behind us. That's how quick it moved. He said, when we turned around to run, there was a reptile alien standing behind us. He said this thing was at least 7 to 7.5 foot, to maybe 8 foot tall, had a reptile man's head, but it was a reptile head. It was very muscular, looked like a human body on the ordinary of a human body, but a reptile body, extremely muscular. And he said, and it was looking at us, and he said, it cast some kind of a spell on us so that the children and the women, no one could move. We were like frozen. And he said, and even nobody could say anything, nobody could cry, nobody could run, nobody could do anything. And he said we were staring at it, and it was looking at us, but it had control over us. It had locked us so that we couldn't move, we couldn't scream, we couldn't do anything. And he said, and this thing was gazing at all of us, looking at the children, looking at the women. He said, this reptile alien, and he says, we're just Christians in a church, but we saw a reptile alien. This thing was not of this world. And he said this thing was looking at all of us, and then he said it looked at the men, and the look he gave us, we understood. He didn't say anything, but we knew. He was saying, I'm going to leave you alone. But when I leave here, you better get out of here. And he said, the alien walked over like he was leaving, is gone. Just like they was gone. And he said, when he was gone, the moment he was gone, everyone came back to life. And the babies were screaming, the women were yelling, screaming. Everybody came back to life, instantly. And he says, we ran like we were totally out of our minds, running back to the cars. We ran down the hill, got in the cars, and the women were screaming, the children were yelling, and he says, and we drove back, and he said it was the most incredible, horrible experience. And he says, all the guys in my office will tell you, we saw a reptile alien in Colorado. So when you're talking about, he says, so when you're talking about reptile aliens in the ancient world, I got news for you. There's one we know for sure in Colorado. We saw him. And he said this thing ran back and it went so fast it was just, it's gone. But that's how fast it came up behind us. We knew that we'd been spotted, we turned around, and it was too late. It's already standing here. And he said, so when I hear tales now about people who have seen reptile aliens, I got to tell you, there's 6 families here. We all belong to the same church, and I will guarantee you, we saw one. You can bet on it. So, and this is and I found out because I started asking questions when I was in Vegas about this man and his company. And yes, he's a very wealthy man and a very, very big company, well known in Las Vegas for buying and selling the hotels and big properties. And he said, yeah, I'm just telling you what happened to us.
And my suspicion, which may well be yours as well,
Say it again.
My suspicion, and it may well be yours as well, is that for every person who comes forward and reports a story, there are 100 others who don't.
Oh, I'm probably right. You're probably right.
Maybe 1,000 others who don't, because who's going to come forward publicly and say a story like that? Not many.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons, of course, why I want to encourage you to, why I have been supporting you in coming forward to tell the stories, not only to support David Icke, but it's to support other people to have had these experiences, because I suspect that they are fairly widespread and nobody wants to talk about it.
Well, you're right.
That's my guess.
Did you ever talk to Dr. Roger Lear about his case up in Bakersfield?
I don't believe so. I know Roger Lear,
yeah,
and he's a very good man. I don't think I know about the Bakersfield incident. Tell me about it.
Well, I'm just trying to remember the story basically. If he were here, he would give you the real dope on it. But I'm just remembering the basic story is that there was a guy up in Bakersfield who is a fire investigator. He's a fireman investigator for the fire department. And he has been having reptile aliens coming into his bedroom. Him and his wife have had reptile aliens, he says, were coming into his bedroom. They didn't harm him, but he said, he was telling Dr. Lear, because he called Roger Lear, because Roger is noted for his work with aliens and
Implants.
and implants. And so Roger went up to see him, and this guy's with the fire department as an investigator, arson investigator for the fire department. And he said that the guy was saying that at night him and his wife were in bed, and the wall facing them became like water, and looked like water, and reptile aliens walked through. And when they came through, then the wall came back up to a wall again. And he said that they stood there looking at him and walking around the room, and he said we were so frightened out of our wits, we're just watching these reptile aliens walking around in the bedroom. And he said then we feel this strange feeling again, and the wall becomes like a water. And I think it's interesting that that's the way, you know, what is it, Star Trek or whatever it is, the wall looks like water. Well, this is a long time ago. This guy was
They're actually talking about a plasma portal.
talking, that's a long time ago. And and he said the aliens will walk back through again. So he said, so what they decided to do was they got a towel, large, big towels, which were the same color as the carpet, and I'm just trying to remember all of this from the experience, but they glued on the back or taped on the back aluminum foil, about 6 or 8 sheets of aluminum foil over and over on top of each other, and taped them on the towel and then laid it back over. So the idea was is that anything coming through that wall will not see the towel because it's the same color as the floor, and will walk, and the impression will be on the aluminum foil to prove that there was something in that room. And he said, and sure enough, these things come back on a few days later. They came back and walked through and walked around and looked at him and her in the bed, and then walked back over and walked back through the wall again. And he said, I've got them. They stepped on the carpet, on the towel. And he said, yeah, and they pick it up, and you could see the imprint of the foot, the 3, I think he said there was like 3 fingers on the foot. And yet there was a piece of the nail was caught in the carpet. And they took that piece of nail and they called Dr. Lear and showed it to him. And they've had that little piece of a nail sent to, I don't know, Los Alamos or one of those big research laboratories, government research labs. And they said that this was, it was still alive. It was still living. It was a living tissue, and it was still alive. And that it was seemed to be growing. When they got it, as opposed to where it was now, it's grown in length, so it seems to be growing, even though it's not connected to the body. It's still growing. And so that's just one more story about a reptile aliens.
Did they get any analysis of what this... was this in the days of DNA tests when they could...
Well,
this
yeah, you know what? He was just telling me this off the cuff, you know, and he didn't go into much, because I guess we were talking about reptile aliens. He said, well, you know, I'm just having some investigation of something's going on right now up in Bakersfield. But they did get a footprint on the aluminum foil to show that there was something came through the wall, whatever it was. So
these are, yeah, you're just confirming that these aren't apparitions. They're
yeah,
physical.
these apparitions actually have weight.
They have weight. Yeah, they have weight.
Because they came through the wall, and their imprint is on the aluminum foil.
Yeah, and they have some kind of interdimensional capability.
Exactly, they have interdimensional capabilities that come through and walk back.
So, like I said, if you ain't like, you got to get the old information in order to understand what's going on. Because a lot of this stuff that they've been telling us about, they've been putting it out for years, But now everything is coming full circle as we're in present day time, right? So now back to the presentation at hand. It talks about them returning from the abyss when you're talking about this draconian reptilian and these archonic forces, right? This is a part of the final sacrifice. So what you're looking at is basically a blueprint demonstration of what's going to be taking place in the future. You're talking about, AI, femotech, nanobots, and biological weaponry. When you're talking about asymmetrical biochemical warfare, the end times is generating panics. This is a part of, the rapture, the big extermination program. That's going to lead into, hybridization process, and it's also being used for soul trap mechanisms. Even when you look at this publication, it's also talking about how Donald Trump is also a fourth Reich draconian alien, right? Which could be true. You never know, because it's in many different ways to look at it, because he's a Luciferian, right? One thing you got to understand about Donald Trump, he's a Luciferian. So everything that is a part of his administration is the embodiment of false light. That false light is also artificial intelligence. And I told you in the last transmission on how these entities can materialize themselves through the artificial intelligence, right? That's just something to look at. You got to think, right? So now this is where we get into the biblical context. When you go to the ancient book of wisdom, it talks about the blood sacrifice to the elementals. An elemental is an archon. An archon is a draconian. A draconian is a cherubim, 200 fallen angels. It's all the same thing. It's just different mythologies that basically scrambles up the truth, basically. So it tells you that the rites of the blood sacrifice to the elemental forces came into being, right? And then when you go to this side, it talks about how they rule Earth for a period of time. Exons are just another nomenclature term for a draconian reptilian. So they rule Earth for a certain period of time. Great ones came from the Earth and tried to free them from negotiation. So then they open up the gateway to the very center of the Earth. They are imprisoned, right? So not all draconian reptilians are imprisoned or whatever, but they do control the demiurge. You got some that are basically inside of Nightmare Hall when you're talking about these deep underground military bunker systems. They know about this technology. Now, this is where we get into Revelations 9:16 when you're talking about the Armageddon of the army of fallen angels, the 200 fallen angels. So one thing you got to understand the diametrical difference between the sigils and the spacecrafts. A lot of these spacecrafts, when you see a square and a rectangle, that is a part of the negative faction. Cylindrical crafts comes from us. Shams comes from us. Motherships come from us, right? And they have multi-dimensional color lighting. Anytime that you see anything with white lights, that's coming from the faction of the Majestic 12 or Draconian Reptilians or the government. Anything that has like a white fluorescent light to it, when you're talking about spaceships, that's coming from the negative faction. Everything that has a multitude of colors is coming from us, because one thing you got to understand about motherships and cylindrical crafts that come from the Anunnaki, you got to understand that they use the technology, it's a crystal technology, and everything that's correlated with crystals is all a part of the color spectrum of everything in third density. Right? Because what do crystals do? They send out light vibrations and they pick up light vibrations. And they're able to absorb intelligence, electromagnetic radiation, which is light. So the square vehicles and the rectangular vehicles that you see in the sky, that's all coming from the government. That's all coming from draconian reptilians, right? So the fallen angels of Armageddon, this is talking about the smorgasbord's final sacrifice. These were joined in with Lucifer, fallen angels, Benelli, the sons of Benelli, who are the Ashkenazi so-called people over in Ukraine, and they gathered together to make a war. So World War III is not an actual physical war. It's actually talking about the spiritual implications that's going to materialize in physical form in the future when you're talking about the War of Armageddon. The War of Armageddon is the abomination of desolation, which is the great dreadful day of the final sacrifice of 2030. So that's why the Sustainable Development Goals works in tandem with everything that's a part of that prophecy. So the sons of Earth gather to make Armageddon war, right? against the sons of light. Who are the sons of light? The seeds of Enki, right? The ones who have a nationality. Nationality comes from the word nativity. Nativity means birthright. Your birthright is your navel, your ethereal cord that's connected to the planet. So the sons of light, the green light, are the ones who have that tetrahedron that sits at the seal of the head, right? Because you cannot be holy until you become a whole brain thinker. When you become a whole brain thinker, that's when you activate the light energy. We're going to get into it today, because this is all correlated with the map of consciousness, right? Because one thing you got to understand is that when you get close to these draconian entities, right, you're going to manipulate and interface with their physiology. That's going to cause an interface transition within the ethers of our reality. Because one thing you got to understand about the carbon body is an electromagnetic generator and a light code transducer. And that light code is activated by way of the photovoltaic energy. The photovoltaic energy has the ability to convert light into bioelectricity, which basically gives an enhancement and a coherence to your magnetism. So that's going to activate the cymatic frequencies, and those cymatic frequencies are sound conductors that have the ability to manipulate the physical vessel of a draconian if he's standing right next to your ass, right? So that means that you have to be vibrating at a certain consciousness to activate the higher seal of God, which is the mind. I told you, God is the frequency of the mind because it activates by way of gamma radiation. Gamma radiation has the ability to neutralize the interface of parasites or anything that has a parasitical energy around you. So if you're vibrating from anything from the forces of power, when you're looking at the map of consciousness, if you activate, the only way to activate the Merkaba light ship, you have to be activated by way of the green energy, the blue energy, and the purple energy. Anything, when you're talking about the chakra system, if you're vibrating at a low frequency, you're vengeful, you're antagonistic, you have a lot of anger, jealousy, you have hate in your heart, right? You're a hater, you know what I'm saying? You just be hating on people for no reason. That's a manifestation blocker. So it's gonna put you at a low vibrational state. So you got the red energy, the yellow energy, and the orange energy. This is what connects you to your lower self. Your lower self is when these entities, when they come from the abyss, they're gonna eat your ass up because you're not harmonizing with the frequency of planet Earth. So you have to be eradicated in the form of a reset. So anything that's activated by way of the higher seals of the map of consciousness, the green energy, when you're talking about the heart chakra above, if you're vibrating at these high frequencies, they cannot touch you because you have the seal of God on your head. That is the tetrahedron. You are holy. You're becoming a whole brain thinker. You activated the right side of the brain, right knowledge, meaning that you have the ability to have the feminine energy working in synergy with the masculine energy. That's what makes you balanced. So it tells you, destroy only those who don't have the green or higher seal of God, Revelation 9. And it was commanded to them, ordered, instructed by the fallen angels, they should not hurt the grass of the earth. Who's the grass of the earth? The righteous people. The righteous people who have that tetrahedron that can activate the Merkaba light ship, right? I was telling you before, the Ark of the Covenant is not an actual device, right? It's the sphenoid bone to where the hypothalamus gland and the pituitary gland sits, which is basically the holy seat of the pineal gland when it's activated by the higher seal of God, right? So the fallen angels cannot destroy the righteous people or the righteous seed because we're vibrating a high vibrational frequency. If your ass is eating cheeseburgers, you drinking liquor, you know what I'm saying, fifths of Henny and all that other shit that keeps you in a low vibrational state, and everything that's connected to their system, when they come from the abyss, they're going to eat your ass up because you're not harmonizing with planet Earth, because the planet Earth has to go through a density construct in order to get to the hereafter. The hereafter is what you call the heavens. So neither any green, so it tells you the tree of life, aka the pillar of light, the food and herbs of healing, neither any tree, but only those men and women which have the seal of God on their foreheads. The seal of God on your forehead is the activation of the pineal gland. You only activate the pineal gland when you have the magnetites and the dendrites activated. These are crystals. Crystals absorb light, electromagnetic radiation. So that's going to create more neurons in the brain. When you have more neurons in the brain, you activate the power of God by way of the mind. So that's why I said the power of the mind is, which is your thoughts. Your thoughts leave an energetic imprint in the ethers because your thought is associated with Thoth. That's you. That's Enki. That's the spirit of Melchizedek, like I've been telling you. So that's why, like I said, when you activate the seal of God and these entities is coming from the abyss, they cannot touch you. That's why I say there's no need to create bonkers and all that other shit and trying to go to Mars and try to deviate from everything that's connected to our reality. There's no reason for that because you are protected because that's what makes you chosen. You are chosen because you have the ability to create the mind activation to combat these energies of the draconian reptilian. You could be standing right next to one and your energy alone is going to manipulate their physiology, right? That's why I understand you got to be vibrating at a high vibrational frequency. Like I said, if your ass is a hater, you are jealous, you have a lot of anxiety, you're not balanced, your chakra system is out of whack, you got too much energy, you got everything pulling on your energy, right? You stealing from people, you killing people, you cheating, you at a low vibrational state. That's because you're not activated by way of the heart chakra. That's Tahuti, that's Thoth, right? The mind and the heart has to be working in synergy to create your Makaba, right? And that's going to create a force field. So when you standing right next to a draconian, he ain't going to be able to touch you. He's going to look you up and down and go on about his business. But if you activated by the lower chakra systems, you just ate a cheeseburger. You know what I'm saying? Your ass is grass now. Now you food for the gods, right? You food for the gods because you're doing things that are low vibrational. This is the time you're supposed to be raising up your vibration because we're in solar cycle 25. The activation of the sun is going to activate your physiology because I told you the carbon body is photovoltaic. It has the ability to transmute light into bioelectricity, and that natural electricity is activated by antimatter, right? When you're talking about the non-ether activation, antimatter, electromagnetic radiation, thermodynamics, hydrodynamics, resonant energy, and electrical energy. That's what makes up the carbon body when it's activated by way of the map of consciousness to activate the higher seal of God, which is the mind. So if your mind is not in order, and when these draconians come from the abyss, they're going to eat your ass up. And I'm going to prove it to you. Hold on for a sec. I got a video to show you. All right. They're going to eat you up. So you got to be vibrating in a high vibrational frequency. This planet was created as a farm for these entities to attach themselves to your physiology. So even, like I said, there's a multitude of ways they can get you. They can get you through energy extraction by way of the emotion. They can get you through the extraction of technology, or they can come from the abyss and just literally eat you. That's a part of the final sacrifice. And this guy right here was a part of Dr. York's organization, and he's going to be telling you about the final sacrifice that I'm telling you about. It shows you all throughout biblical context about the final sacrifice is going to be taking place, right? But y'all think this shit is a joke. We finna get straight to it.
Sightings are now rampant. Worldwide. Everyday occurrences. These are flesh-eating predators from other star systems. Here, as hunters of exotic creatures and animals on safari, or agreeable or disagreeable scientists and geneticists from other galaxies who are marking their territories just like all predators do. They are looking for test subjects, for genetic engineering, or for bizarre experimentation, or abundant food supply for their star systems, or for slaves or just trophies. Once the man gently be released with their children, a first come, first serve, free for all grab, because time would be of the essence. A winner takes all grab, and all you can eat, smorgasbord. and a merciless, unencumbered, savage bloodbath. Do you get the picture? Then here comes the meteorite showers and the mad rush to get off the surface of the planet before, with their bounty before the showers hit. Those that escape being captured will be totally annihilated by the purging fires. If you think this is a joke, then go ahead and laugh while you can. Your underground bunkers and your primitive weaponry would be no match, useless, against their advanced laser technology.
Like I said, it don't matter. You can build all the bunkers in the world. You can have all the motherfucking resources in the world. But like I said, if you don't have the seal of God by way of the activation of the mind, they're going to eat you. Point blank period. You got to be activated by way of a certain consciousness in order to be protected. That's the only thing. You got to have that green ethereal energy around you, right? You have to have that ethereal energy around you, because that ethereal energy has a somatic frequency, which is sound conductors. And that octave frequency has the same ability as a bell or instruments. When you look at the word instrument, the suffix of the word has mental in it, has mental for a reason, because the instruments in itself has an ethereal energy to activate the mind, the Christ consciousness, right? Why you think they in church they call it the organ? Because it's activating the organs, it's putting a vibrational frequency to the organs to activate the mental process of God. Instrumental. So the somatic frequencies of the ether has the ability to vibrate the body at a certain consciousness to activate the Merkaba. As above, so below, which is the heart chakra working in synergy with the mind. That's how you activate the Merkaba, right? That is your fire in the middle. Pyramid, right? You got to activate the energetic frequency of the soul. So that's the only way to be protected. You have to be balanced here, and you have to be balanced here. If you're not balanced, that means your chakra system is out of balance, and because you're operating from the lower chakra system. So they want to keep, that's why you got to look at everything. Why you think everything on the planet is inverted? Why you think everything on the planet actually goes backwards, where they castigate righteous energy? They make the good bad and they make the bad good. Everything is backwards in the three-dimensional world. There's a reason for that. They got to keep you here in a form of semantics and technology. They got to keep you here at a low vibrational state. Why? Because you are food for the gods, right? It's not a coincidence that every motherfucking block you go, there's a liquor store and there's a McDonald's somewhere, there's a Hardee's, there's a Burger King. Everything is being used to keep you at a low vibrational state. Then you got to understand about the gas stations when they serving the chicken with the buttery honey milk biscuits and all this other shit. The reason that is because a lot of these so-called Middle Eastern people, they're actually Chaldeans. Chaldeans, they come from the faction of Draconians. So this is why they set them up with gas stations. They give you stuff from the store that keeps you at a low vibrational state. They're trying to prep your physiology so when these gods come from the abyss, they're going to eat your ass up. Everything is here to be weaponized to keep you at a low vibrational state so where these entities can feed off your physiology. That's what this is all about. This is why the world is the way it is, right? Because the illusion of polarity operates by way of emotion. You have an emotional connection to drugs. You have an emotional connection to sex. You have an emotional connection to everything that keeps you at a low vibrational state because you're energetically out of balance. They weaponize your emotions. So you got to get your emotions and use it as a navigation system like I've been telling y'all, right? And I'm going to do a video on how to keep yourself at a high vibrational state and how to stay in alignment, right? That's what this is all about. You got to get your emotions in order. Because if your emotions is not in order, you know, your destiny is going to be out of order, right? And your destiny is going to be acclimated to the final sacrifice of these draconian entities, right? This is not a joke. Because like I said, you just got to use some type of rational and critical thinking skills. Why everything on the planet has to keep you at a low vibrational state? What's the basis of it? Why are they doing that? Because they prepping you for the gods. And those gods are draconian. And those draconians are archons. These are the 200 fallen angels that's going to come from the abyss, right? Or when you're talking about these cryptids in Nightmare Hall, in these deep underground military bunker systems, right? That's what this is all about.
And their advanced tunnel, there will be no safe zone or ultimate protection, because you will be attempting to cheat nature, King Kong. Wishful thinking. The law is for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. There are no amendments to the nature's laws. You can forget that. Enough ranting and raving. Now let's return.
So now we're going to get back to the materialization of the transmission. We're going to get right back to it. Now, like I said, the map of consciousness. So like I said, the smorgasbord event, when you're going to have a feast for these entities, a final sacrifice, if you're vibrating at these lower chakra systems, it's over for you, literally. Because one thing you got to understand about the elite, they vibrate at a low vibrational frequency because everything they created in the system is based on colonization and imperialism, right? Technology. They lying to you. So by proxy, they automatically, vibrating at a low vibrational state, even though if they have the resources to build bunkers and have mansions and stuff like that. Just because you got money don't mean that you're vibrating at a high vibrational frequency, because your mind it's all about the mind. It's all about the frequency of mind activation. And the reason they do everything as far as like external stimulation, that's because they don't have the physiology to tap into God. So in order to escape judgment, they got to use their so-called resources and they fake ass money. So now, when you activate the Merkaba, this is where the veil is removed from the optic thalamus, which is the eye of God. Mark 15:38. And the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, activating the Merkaba, top to bottom. So that means that the encryption of the pineal gland, when you're talking about the restrictor, because like I said, the suprachiasmatic nucleus of the holonomic brain theory is an encryption over the brain. So when it's activated, that's when you activate the temple. That is the Zohar body that connects you to the ninth dimension of the non-ether activation. That is a part of the spiritual creation and a part of everything that's connected to the hereafter. So then when you go to Luke 23:45, and the sun was darkened, and the veil from the temple was rent in the midst, and the sun was darkened. Why is that? That's talking about how everything's going to be taking place when you're talking about the energetic grid going down, because the grid has a multitude of grid nodes, and these grid nodes have spaces of dark energy in them, right? And those spaces of dark energy, this is why they set up different places on the planet. Let me show you. I gotta show you. As far as like the firmament, there's holes inside the firmament where you have dark energy, right? So it tells you right here, however, because of the end, which is going into the year of 2025, going up to the year 2030 of our consciousness age, the grids were open. This is talking about the firmament, because I told you God of the Bible is actually Satan, because that was part of the spiritual cutoff that put the restriction over the brain, because you have a firmament and a veil over the brain, and you have a veil and encryption over the planet, which is the firmament. Satan, God of the Bible, separated the intergalactic waters from the third dimension. That is a part of the spiritual cutoff, because now you got, many different phases of 7 layers of heavens to get to the magnetosphere, right? So the grids were open. The mantle of Earth could no longer provide protection for the war in the space, which is the lower fourth dimension of the demiurge merging in with the higher dimensions, right? So the Prince of Darkness, the air, who is Enlil, right? I told you, when you look at the word Enlil, it means En means Lord, Lil means sky, Lord of the sky, Prince of air. Hello, the ascension of Isaiah, prophet 10. Because the angel who led me again descended into the firmament, and where the prince of dwells, he's talking about the dragon, and the angels of the air were plundering, doing violence to one another, right? This is all talking about the final sacrifice when they come from the abyss, just like the guy was specifying in the video that I just showed you. Now, on earth, you are in bondage, but the spiritual light is inside of you, fire in the middle, right? When I was talking about the pyramids, the Merkaba light ship, right? Activating that tetrahedron, which is the seal of Tahuti. The spiritual light is inside of you, the spirit of Melchizedek. The key to the releasement is inside of you to activate the Zohar body. On earth, as man in bondage, because like I said, one thing you got to understand about the word Egypt, Egypt means bondage, right? But we all know that planet Earth, or everything on planet Earth, all these land masses or whatever, when you're talking about Pangea way before the continental drift, they called it Egypt, right? When really it was called Kemet, because Egypt is a word, like I said, it demonstrates bondage, and it's also a Greek term because it was connected to the Hyksos. That's a whole different transmission, though. We're not going to get into the Kemetic spirituality too much as far as like the mythology of it. Now, on Earth, you are bounded by space and time, which is the god of Chronos. Chronos to trap you in an artificial time analysis mechanism, which is the third dimension, merged in with the fourth dimension, which is the demiurge. Encircling the planet, a wave of vibration that binds him to the place of the plane of unfoldment, right? Is the key to the releasement within the man of freedom and to be found. Now, the 9 interlocking worlds separated by vibration are there are 9 interlocking worlds, spaces which lie not side by side, but in the simulation, a relative position in space separated by each other by octave vibrations and curves and angles, right? We're in a prison planet. It's telling you all throughout biblical context that we're in a prison planet. And it tells you right here, you got the sacred energies all over the planet. There's many different ley lines and energetic grid nodes that works in tandem with the firmament and the technological grid node, right? This is all part of the encryption. It's all part of the firmament. But like I said, you got dark pockets of energy all around the planet Earth. There's one in Southern California, and then you got it in Colorado, then you got in the upstate New York, then you got it in Washington, D.C., and then you got right here where the Bermuda Triangle is at. These are all sacred energies, and this is why in the video the guy said in Colorado, remember the white Jordan Maxwell, he said the guy they seen the Draconians or whatever, they had that experience, it was in Colorado, right? Not a coincidence. Because this is why this is where they do most of the rituals at. Then you gotta understand this is goes into Diddy and the E list that took place when you're talking about the deep state shadow government or whatever. The reason a lot of those islands is at the Bermuda Triangle because they do a lot of rituals right there. There's a sacred energy right there, right? Sacred energies, energy points. This is where they do the multitude of their rituals. As far as like upstate New York or whatever, this is where they do a lot of rituals for the music industry, right? Especially in places like Rochester and Buffalo, right? There's a lot of record executives that live in the upstate areas, and they do these rituals. Now, and it tells you right here in this other publication, the Brothers of Darkness has set up their base at a Great Pyramid, 2 Crosses location in Colorado. Eventually, when you're going to have the pole shift, when it's in full spectrum, this is going to be the new capital. This is why they built all that stuff in these deep underground military systems in the Denver airport, right? This is why they doing what they do. Because from Leviathan, the lizard people, and the space aliens, a part of the secret underground military bunker systems, have a cursed horse at the Denver International Airport, right? Because it's connected to a form of divination. Now, hold on. Now, like I told you, people I did a video, I did a little TikTok, little snippet video, and I posted it on my Instagram showing you the flying crafts, right? You're going to see more of this as we get through the Great Awakening period. Because like I said, we're in Solar Cycle 25. So the flying crafts of the fallen angels, Revelation 9:18, square and rectangle, flying vehicle crafts of the fallen angels with the third laser weapons and cannons or whatever. Like I said, square and rectangle crafts come from the negative faction. Anything that you see cylindrical, like a sham, or something like that, that's coming from us, coming from our people, coming from our ancestors, our galactical ancestors. So the Emerald Tablets, it tells you that the law of cause and effect and the key of prophecy, light, then there shall become unto man the great warfare, which is the final sacrifice that shall make the earth tremble and shake in its course. A, then shall dark brothers open the warfare between light and the night, light and darkness. And when man again shall conquer the ocean and fly in the air on wings like birds, when he has learned to harness the lighting, then shall the time of warfare begin. Great shall the battle be twixt with forces, great warfare, darkness, and light. Nation shall rise against nation, and using the dark forces to shatter the earth, draconian, reptilian, archons. Weapons of force shall wipe out earth men until half of the races of men shall be gone, right? This is all part of the reset, because the final sacrifice is all a part of the reset. Hold on. Now, this is where we get into the cylinder and the round vessels of the Guardian Watchers. The cylindrical, that's coming from us, because anything that's cylindrical operates on 0-point energy fields. That's an ethereal energy. The same ethereal energy that has the same octave of natural instruments, right? Sound wave frequency, which is a somatic conductor to these space vehicles because they're operated by way of crystal technology. So the cylindrical globular vessels guard and do prevent man from breaking the barriers that is bound with, because he is not yet ready. He will not be permitted to pass to other worlds and carry that destruction with him. So the Watchers have been sent to this earth as guardians, the brothers of green light, the Sufi order of the sons of green light, which is the spirit of Melchizedek, the brothers of light, cylinder, and the round Macabre, right? Your Macabre light ship. That is the esoteric aspect of a spaceship, because you become a master to where you turn your physical vessel into a vehicle, right? So the great dreadful day of 2030 is going to be activated in between the years of 2025 to the year of 2027. Malachi 4:5. Behold, I will send you Elijah, the prophet, before the coming of the great and dreadful day, who is the Lord, who is the spirit of Melchizedek, who is Tahuti, who is Thoth, right? So within these implications that's going to be taking place, you're going to have a money financial clash, then you're going to have a civil war, then you're going to have Gog and Magog invading America, which is China and Russia, fallen angels in the war in the heavens, which is activated by way of the Draconians coming from the abyss and eating people who had a low vibrational state. When I broke that down with the map of consciousness, then you got King Louis, the waster, the return of the Netters or Nazareth, and the destroyer, aka the spoiler, the red Kachina, comes from the magnetic pole shift, right? That's what this is all about. Now, you got to get into who will be destroyed. If you're following, when you look at this blueprint of the hierarchical chart, this is the hierarchical chart of the forces of darkness. So if you're connected to anything that's coming from the factions of the Canaanite, the Vatican, and everything in the United States, if you're following these ideologies that's connected to the pyramid of evil, when they come to the surface, they're going to eat your ass up because you're following a false construct. The forces of darkness, the forces of evil that is facilitated by Dagon, who is the dragon, who is Baal, who is the Draconian, the serpent, Lucifer, or the devil. Whatever mythology that you follow is in it, right? Because like I said, everything that's connected to old earth is facilitated by the world leaders, big corporations, and organized religion. So if you're following the religion, they still gonna eat your ass up because you're following a false construct that keeps you at a low vibrational state, because the religion is activated by way of fear. Fear keeps you at a low vibrational state by way of your emotions. So if you're captivated by fear, this is when you're going to be a part of the final sacrifice. Because there's nothing to fear if you're truly holy by way of the mind. There's nothing to fear. Baal and the dragon, 1-3. Now the Babylons had an idol called Baal. Because one thing you got to understand about, this is why we call America modern day Babylon. Because Babylon means baby lion, meaning that we're a part of a faction of the United Kingdom. That's when they came over here with the 13 colonies. So we are actually the baby lion. Because when you look at the sigil of the United Kingdom, it's a what? It's a lion. So Babylon, baby lion, America, which was a part of the Assyrian Empire, right? Called Baal. So then Baal and the dragon, 1:23, and in that same place there was a great dragon which they of Babylon worshipped, right? You worshiping a draconian energy. You're worshiping draconian religions. So you have to divorce yourself from the religion. You have to get away from these energies that subjugate you to keep you at a low vibrational state. That's why they create the religion, because it's everything in their system is activated by way of fear. Fear is a low vibrational energy. Stop fearing stuff, because when you know the truth, you move different, right? And when you start moving different, that's when you're going to activate certain parts of yourself that you know you didn't have. All of a sudden now you have telepathy. You have psychometry, you have clairvoyance. Now you're levitating. Now you're moving shit with your mind, right? You can't do that because fear is an encryption over your spiritual gifts. This is why they want to keep you stuck in religion, to worship the dragon, right? Because when you worship the dragon, that's going to eliminate your magnetism. So when you eliminate your magnetism, you eliminate your magic. Your magic is your spiritual gifts. Now, like I said, there's many different types of draconian reptilians. You got to understand that, right? There's many different types. You got to understand why they got these cathedrals. They got many different cathedrals. When you look at a Catholic church, they show you gargoyles and all this other stuff in stone. Eventually, they're going to turn in, they're going to materialize in physical form and move around. That's what you must understand. But furthermore, you got to ask yourself, why do they have draconian gargoyles guarding the cathedrals, right? Because when you get into the inception of mythology and study different, religions and stuff like that, they tell you that the draconians are actually evil. So why are they on the church? Now this is Hak Sun Dong. Hak Sun Dong is one of the few unexplored places on Earth, which is linked to the mysterious sightings of strange reptilian gray creatures that stand on two legs. According to the local residents, the most notable about Sungdong Cave are the strange creatures that are believed to dwell within it. They describe seeing reptilian type of humanoid beings emerging from the Sungdong Cave, and they believe that they actually live deep inside this cave. This is all correlated with Hollow Earth and things of that nature, because there's different layers. There's 7 layers to get to Hollow Earth. There's also 7 layers outside the firmament to get to the magnetosphere. As above, so below. They are not human. They were lizards, right? Now, I referenced this movie before, but you got to watch this movie. It came out in the 1980s, and the guy who put out the movie and the guy who was in the movie was Roddy Rod Piper, who was in the WWF back in the 1980s. He said in an interview, he said, this is not a movie. He said, this is a futuristic message for humanity, right? He said, this is not a movie. This is a futuristic message for humanity. Because he had these glasses, these special glasses. When he put them on, he was able to see these entities that was controlling government. He was able to see these entities that was walking around looking human, because the glasses have the ability to manipulate the space-time continuum. The glasses have the ability to manipulate everything as far as the photon-like spectrum that is contained of subatomic particles. So when you put the glasses on, it is contained of obsidian and tourmaline crystal, right? That has the same capabilities of a black scrying mirror, right? So when he put the glasses on, he's able to see them. When he take them off, he's not. right? That's why eventually I'm gonna come out with a technology. I'm gonna work on something. I'm gonna work on some glasses to where it's gonna contain the certain crystals that can see beyond the visible light spectrum of everything that we see in third density. So a black scrying, you gotta ask yourself, why is a black scrying mirror $642? Because if you got a black scrying mirror and it has a metal back to it and you hold it up to certain places or whatever, it'll show you the real physiology or whatever is in front of you. It has the ability to see ectoplasm and apparitions and spirits. So that's why I'm gonna come out with some type of glasses eventually, and I'm gonna use, you know, crystal technology as far as like obsidian and tourmaline and other crystals that can help us see beyond the visible light spectrum to where we're able to see what's in front of us, see the illusion. So if you will, go on Amazon, go to old antique stores and get these type of find a black scrying mirror, because it's a magical mirror that's going to show you the reality of everything in the spiritual plane, of what you don't see. So that's why, you know, the black scrying mirror also has the same capabilities, because when you see, one thing you got to understand, when it comes to crystals, you got to use these crystals and connect them to a certain octave frequency, right? This is how you're able to open up portals. This is how you're able to open up a multitude of things as far as like in the spiritual dimensional planes, right? Cymatic frequencies is sound conductors. That sound conductor and is amalgamated with an instrument or is amalgamated with an octave vibration. That's when you're going to be able to see the truth. Because like I said, draconian reptilians despise the sound of bells. The moment the ringing in the ear the moment the ringing begins, it reacts instinctively, running from the source so fast as it can. So this is why, like I said, they demonize bells, because a bell has an ethereal energy. A flute has an ethereal energy. When you're vibrating at a high vibrational frequency, you have an ethereal energy, because the ethereal energy is the energetic frequency of the soul that has an octave vibration to it. Just your energy alone, you standing right next to a person that's looking like a human, but it's really a draconian. If you're standing right next to them, if you're vibrating at a high frequency, that's just as good as a bell. That's just as good as a flute or an instrument, because everything in the physical world is already inside you, but you can't activate it until you're vibrating at a high frequency. So if I'm vibrating at a high frequency and I'm standing next to a person who's a humanoid draconian shapeshifter, they're gonna try to hurry up and leave me, because my energy alone is just too vibrational for them. My energy alone is going to disrupt their system. It's going to cause an interface transition. It's going to cause a glitch. So then you also got to look at this. You know, you got to ask yourself, why do people come up missing on time every year? 800,000 people coming up missing all the time. You got 17 people come up missing from Indeed job interviews that was in Atlanta. All these people all around the planet are coming up missing, right? Because like I said, just like the lady said, Mabel White, ain't no woman named Mabel finna lie to you. They come to the planet for human experimentation, and by way of the corporations that's connected to these draconians, this is where they sacrifice some of us. But like I said, this is not the final sacrifice. The final sacrifice is when you're going to see them and they're going to be coming to the surface and they're going to abduct us. But they're not going to abduct you if you have the seal of Solomon or the tetrahedron, the seal of God on your forehead. So if you're new to this channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. So I'm going to give a brief synopsis about everything. This video is basically the basis of this video is giving you the true reality about the final sacrifice that's going to be taking place. The final sacrifice that came out with a documentation in the CIA, and they was telling you about, it was extraterrestrial entities that turned 23 Soviet Union soldiers into stone. And it goes in, like I said, I'll talk about the draconians and how they use us to harvest our energy. And there's going to be a final sacrifice that's going to be taking place in the future. There's this publication that I came across, it talks about the Draconians want the earth for them. That's what this is all about, right? That's what the final sacrifice is all about. So if you will, go back in the video, screenshot some of this publication and read it, right? This is all connected to biblical context. It goes into a little bit of metaphysics, right? That's pretty much the basis of this video. Now, okay. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, I'm going to come out with a video eventually that's going to give you a demonstrative blueprint on how to tap into your higher self and how to stay at a high vibrational frequency. Like I said, in order to leave the matrix, you got to use it to get out. That's the only way. You got to use the matrix as a catalyst to create this, your energetic morphic field, to create this vibration of energy that keeps you at your higher self, right? You got to work out. You, like I said, some people think that they just read books, because it's okay to read books, because like I said, reading books is just like it's weightlifting for the brain, right? But you also got to work out, because if you work out more than you read, your ass is still out of shape. So you got to work out and you got to read. You got to be balanced. Work out, read, get massages. Try to eat healthy as possible. You know what I'm saying? This is how you raise up your frequency, right? It's not all about just wearing crystals and head wraps, right? That's the bullshit. If you want to vibrate, you got to be proactive. You really got to do the work. You got to read. You got to understand what's going on. Get into, understanding sigilcism and sacred geometry and stuff like that. Anything that's going to activate that right hemisphere of the brain to unlock certain parts of yourself that's connected to your epigenetics, to where you pull the subconscious out and bring it to the forefront to make you conscious, to where it basically activates that energetic library, your blueprint, your scroll of all. That's what this is all about, right? It's all about vibrating at a high frequency to where you have the seal of God around you, your energetic morphic field. So when these entities come from the abyss, they're not going to be able to attack you, right? So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you can follow me. I'm going to be doing some at the end of my video, starting on the next video. If you have questions about anything, follow me on Instagram and send it to my Instagram. Message me on Instagram. My Instagram is BDell1014. BDELL1014. If you have any questions, contact me on my Instagram and I will follow you back. And when you have a question, I will pop it up on the screen at the end of the videos, and I'm going to, give you the edification that you need based on the question that you give me. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching this video. Please get this video out there. End of transmission.
1014.